Nick Clegg there, ably helped, by the way, by BBC producer Rachel Wright. And Mr Clegg is with me here. And we're joined from New York by Kevin Sabet, former drugs policy advisor to the Obama administration. Nick Clegg, thanks for making the film. Very interesting. Just what would your policy be? Not on cannabis. We know the Lib Dems have had a decriminalisation policy on that for ages. But cocaine, crack, crystal meth, what would be your view?
I think cannabis, though, is the big, that's by far the biggest drug.
But that's the easy one. Let's talk about
I don't think it's easy at all.
Let's talk about cocaine, because you've just made a film in Colombia where they supply the world's cocaine.
If you speak to the president if you cut the bit where I spoke to the president of that very country, and he says if you really want to shift the world's approach to the war on drugs, which has clearly failed because the criminals are getting richer, the potency and the harm of the drugs are getting stronger. You've got to start with cannabis.
Now, I understand that. What would be your policy on cocaine?
Well, for me, the focus is on cannabis, because I think that is by far the biggest share. It's the lion's share of the profits of the criminal gangs. It's where other parts of the world are experimenting by regulating it, taking the sale, and in the interaction.
So you don't have a policy on cocaine or crystal meth or all these other drugs?
Well, of course you have you want to reduce. Look, the whole.
But you don't have your policy is the same as the UN policy, which is the same as the war on drugs that everybody's been fighting everywhere.
I think everybody's policy. You're right. There is one point of consensus, which is everybody wants to reduce the harm of drugs. I'm a dad. I don't want my kids taking drugs.
I know, but I'm just asking. You've got a different policy to the world on cannabis, but the same policy on cocaine.
So, because cannabis is by far the biggest drug that is consumed, given that that is the great thing which fuels the bank accounts of the criminal community around the world, you've got to deal with that and that above and beyond everything else. Of course, that means you also give treatment to people who have addictions of other varieties of other drugs, but the cannabis question is the question which the world faces right now.
Right. Kevin Sabet, do you agree with that? Do you draw a distinction between cannabis, which you might have one policy to, and cocaine and harder drugs where you take a different policy?
Well, obviously they're different, but I must correct one thing. The vast majority of the revenues coming into transnational criminal groups and these drug trafficking organizations is not from cannabis at all. Cannabis is the vast majority of illegal drug use is cannabis, but these are violent criminal organizations getting their money from human trafficking mainly, and then we're talking about things like extortion, kidnapping, cocaine, methamphetamine, and heroin. And so that is why there is absolutely no real, you cannot take it seriously to say that we're going to be legalizing cocaine and methamphetamine, especially in parts of the world where institutions are weak. Now, I will say on the cannabis policy that Mr. Clegg and his colleagues and others have forwarded for legalization, I mean, I find that to be very disappointing given the incredibly progressive and congratulatory policy we should give the Lib Dems on mental health. But the issue is mental health is absolutely connected, especially to heavy, high-potent cannabis use. You cannot have one strategy policy for mental illness and mental health and then turn around and say Colorado and Washington may be having it right. Because I can tell you from the U.S., the increases in youth use and in the problems that are coming out of this massive commercial industry, it is the global tobacco industry all over again. We don't want to be copying alcohol and tobacco for cannabis.
Answer that specific point, if you would, Nick Clegg. It is an interesting one, isn't it? Because there are links between mental health damage and cannabis use, which you want to legalise. And I suspect under your policy...
So I think the very worst people to help either your mental health or your cannabis consumption or any other health problems you have is the criminal fraternity around the world. Why on earth are we allowing these damaging substances to be held in the hands of people who wish us ill? Criminals. Surely it is better to bring this out into the open, to regulate it, that you can make sure that what people consume is safer for them. You can tax it, you can restrict it by age, you can make sure that you can go after the criminals who are, at the moment are getting away scot-free. The extraordinary thing at the moment under the present arrangements is we're locking up people because of possession of drugs, and we're allowing the criminals who sell them the drugs to get away scot-free.
Kevin Sabet, come in.
Sure. Well, first of all, that is a complete false dichotomy that we have to lock people up in prison or we have to essentially allow it to go to Philip Morris and the global alcohol industry, which obviously in the UK has been a complete public health disaster. The issue is you do not have to go to either criminalizing and throwing people in prison. I don't think you should do that for people who are using any drugs. I think they absolutely need treatment, but we don't want to increase the availability, promotion, and commercialization that would absolutely come with this idea of legalization. So, you know, let's not get caught in that trap. In fact, the UK has made progress on this with drugs courts, with a special individual courts that deal with this very complex connection between crime and addiction. Because a lot of people are committing crime to either fuel their drug habit, which they're going to do anyway, whether it's legal or not, or under the influence of drugs, which they're going to do more if it's legal. So you have to look at this in a much more nuanced way.
Kevin Sabet, thank you very much. And Kevin, I'm going to let you go now. Thank you very much indeed.